Hi everyone, this is Melissa from Tassie Stitches. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. This is where we talk mostly about my cross-stitch journey, and occasionally I'm hoping that Kerrilyn will still be able to drop in and say hello, but that hasn't happened for a long time. So it's been a couple of weeks since I've managed to catch up with you, so I've got quite a lot to go over today. So today we'll be covering what I've stitched over the last 2 weeks and also what my plans are upcoming for April. I can't believe it's almost April. And then at the very end, we'll draw the card for the deck of whips for next week. So let's start off with the temperature stitching that I've done over the last 2 weeks. So first off, we've got a finish, an actual finish, not just a temperature finish, but an actual finish. So this piece is Baskets, and this is by Rosewood Manor. This has been stitched on a piece of 28 count even weave in the colourway Donkey that I dyed myself using the called for Valdani threads. If you've been following this channel for a long time, you will know, or just briefly, you'll know that this was not my favourite piece to stitch on, but I do like the finished product. But I'm so glad that it's finished and I don't have to stitch on this again. But that is Baskets by Rosewood Manor. And to finish that off, it took 250.5 stitches because there's a little bit of back stitch in there as well. So that was my one and only finish for the last fortnight, and actually my third finish, I think, for the year. So I don't finish stuff here. I tend to stitch on larger things. So if you like seeing people with finishes, I'm probably not the right person to watch. But anyway, moving on with temperature stitching. Next one on my list is Art Deco Cafe. So, Baskets was assigned to the number 8. So whenever an 8 comes up next, we'll be picking a new project for that. So the next one up on my list was Art Deco Cafe. This is a piece by Box and Fox on Etsy. I quite enjoy stitching this piece. It's there's not many colours to it, so it does stitch up pretty quickly. This got 201 stitches last fortnight, and I believe the majority of those were in the green, up in the hat, and I think there was a little bit of, brought this green down here as well. For the semi-sane, it's not easy being green challenge. What this was used for. And this is a piece of 25 count random Zweigart fabric. It's a standard Zweigart colour, but I don't know what it is. I just got it from a scrap table at my LNS. So that's Art Deco Cafe, and like I said, they got 201 stitches. I'm not sure where I'm going to put everything today. I've got so much stuff. Next up is Sampler Patchwork Squares. This is another piece from an Etsy shop, and this is by Nara X Stitch. She's got quite a few of these tile-like patterns, so if you do enjoy this style of stitching, then it's worth checking them out. Again, this is being stitched on a piece of 28 count. Pretty much all of my full cross are 1/1 all of my full coverage are 1/1 full cross, and I do stitching called for DMC unless I tell you otherwise. So this is 28 count 1/1 full cross. And this had 300 stitches put into it. So really just working up in this, finished off this little bit down here and working up here, bringing that diagonal down. So that's Sampler Patchwork Squares. Then, and that was assigned to the number 2. Then we had Harry Potter. So Harry Potter got 304.5 stitches and that finished off its 1,000 stitches for temperature stitching. And this is where the whole piece is. I should show. I don't really have a good cover picture for this. It was the Mystery Stitch Your Own Adventure sale from Cunning Cross Stitch. I do believe he has another one on the go centered around Hobbits and Middle Earth. So if you're interested in a Stitch Your Own, go and check him out on his Facebook page. I'm not sure how long that one will be up for, but this one is no longer available. And this is on a piece of 28 count even weave that was dyed for this project for me by Crafty Leanie in Australia. And that's the whole project. And then the 304 stitches that I did were all down in the envelopes, which you can't see very well. Can't fold it in half. Okay. So all down in the envelopes down the bottom there. I had a couple of envelopes finished last week, but just carried on working, filling in the small blanks with the cross stitch and doing the back stitch and all up. That, like I said, that was 304.5, and this will now get put away for the minute for temperature stitching. It might come out again, you never know. This piece has an annual goal of 4,000 stitches, which is really just like baskets going in and filling in all the little bits and pieces that I haven't finished. So I don't know if there's 4,000 stitches left in this piece, or 3,000 now, but there's always more left than I think. So we'll just have to wait and see. So that was Letters from Hogwarts, or I call it Harry Potter. Next up, which is allocated to the number 7, is Northern Lights. So this is one of Kerrilyn Manning's Shooting Star collections. This again is on a piece of 28 count even weave, and this has had 100 stitches in the last fortnight. And this was, the stitches were just this navy blue colour. Just down in here. 100 stitches it's not much. But I really enjoy working on this piece. Didn't think I would, but I do tend to like these more geometric type designs. So that was 100 on that one. Then we had Castle Sampler, or what I call Castle Sampler. It's actually called Sampler number 14, and this is by 2x2 cross stitch or X stitch on Etsy. I'm stitching this with Silks for You seasonal pack. So this is the seasonal pack from winter 2023. I've only used 3 colours from the pack so far. This is where it's up to, and this got 100 stitches, and basically that was pretty much all in here. Maybe a little bit across here. All working in that inside green border. And this is 40 count platinum, Swagart platinum. 1/1 full cross. Then the second last temperature was number 6. So this is Band of Braves by Long Dog Sampler. This got 100 stitches, and I'm stitching it on 32 count even weave that I dyed myself in the colourway Galvanised Bucket. So this just got 100, so there was a little bit of fill in here in the bison. This little black plant, the silvery grey flowers. And I think that was it to make the 100. 100 stitches isn't a lot, but it's all progress. So that's Band of Braves. And then the last temperature that came up was a 5, and that is allocated to year round to Spring Garden Band Sampler. This is the sale this year from Stitching Cabin, so if you do like this, you can still jump on board. This is being stitched on a piece of 40 count in the colourway Elizabeth that I dyed myself. Again, 1/1 full cross. Called for DMC, but I have substituted the Chronic for some Petite Treasure braid. There's not a lot. There's like a little bit up here and in the centre of some of the flowers. There's not a lot of Chronic, just enough. And this got, since you've last seen it, this has had 405 stitches. So 100 stitches for temperature stitching and 305 stitches for Deck of Whips. Not last week, or not this week, but the week before. So that 400 stitches essentially finished off the green in this band. And did the green middles and some of the pink in the butterflies. So this may get another 100 stitches in it in March, just so I can finish off a prompt using this for fandom stitching today. They won't be temperature stitches, or they'll just be spare stitches that I have up my sleeve for the month. And then when we move into April, we will move into the April band, which is, I can't point to it with my pointer because you can't see it, but it's the topiary band sitting underneath the butterflies there. So we'll be starting working on the topiaries in April. Don't know how much stitching that'll get in April. There will be 300 spare deck of whip stitches to go towards it, but then the number 5 temperature stitch just doesn't come up very often, so maybe we'll get a few more 5s in April, but who knows. The weather is cooling down, so it's possible we could get some 15s. Okay, then moving on to the deck of whips call, which was for this last week gone, and it was Rubber Ducky Dragon. It still amazes me how my deck of whip calls are all pieces, or most of them are pieces I've touched this year. I'm not calling the ones I haven't touched. It's really weird. And I also had worked on this. This was out for this monthly stitching as well. So this was a March piece, and it got called for a March deck of whips as well. So in the last fortnight, this has actually had 805 stitches put in it. And this is charted by Pain Free Crafts, artwork by Stanley Morrison. This is on a piece of 25 count even weave. And 805 stitches. So just brought this all the way down here. And I'm back in the dragon, so I'm really happy. It's a really happy, vibrant little yellow dragon. And I'm stitching this for a friend. So that's Rubber Ducky Dragon, and that got 804 stitches for the last fortnight. So then moving into just general goal stitching, monthly goal stitching. So first up was Pandemic. So Pandemic met its monthly goal, and as discussed in the last video, I did do all 500 stitches in the one night on the Sunday night a couple of weeks ago. This is being stitched on 32 count Zweigart Platinum in just random skeins of Silk for You. This is where it is up to completely. And I finished off this circle. And then I came down and did this motif here. And now I've come up here to start working over here. So I just stitch until the skein runs out, and then I pick another skein and stitch with that. And this is 2 over 2 on 32 count. And that's had is 500 stitches. And did I don't even think I showed you the picture for that. So Pandemic is a Long Dog sampler piece. It was released by Jules free in the year of the pandemic, but it's still available for purchase if you're interested on her website. A lot of people are stitching that. You'll see it around a lot. So then next up was 13th Colony Bay. This is a piece by the Bay Needle Arts. And this had a monthly goal of 500, and it got its whole 503.5 stitches in the last fortnight. This is being stitched on 32 count. I believe it's a permanent linen. I think it's in the colourway French Rain. This is the total piece as it stands now. So it's actually 3 patterns all joined together. I've completely done the middle pattern. And now I am on the side pattern, and all of the 500 stitches was in over here, filling in the dark green grass and starting to work on that little house. So that is 13th Colony Bay, 2 over 2 on that one for 32 count. And I really enjoy working on by the bay patterns, and looking forward to that one coming out again soon. Actually, I think it comes out next month, but onto that'll be a bit later on. Then was Wind in the Willows, or the Pain-Free Craft Sale from 2022. This is artwork by Chris Dunn, and this is being stitched on a 32 count Witchelt linen. It's a very light green colour. I don't know the exact colourway. This is where the piece is in total. Take that picture down. In total, that's where I'm at. And the 305 stitches, which finished its 500 monthly goal, were all in the border over here. Just doing grey stitches. So not very exciting on that one, but still progress. This is not my favourite. If I had seen this sale in its entirety before I started it, I probably wouldn't have started it. It's not really my style, but I'm stubborn, so we'll just keep working on it a little bit at a time here and there. Next up is Louise Lallier. So this is a reproduction sampler by Reflect de Soie. I'm stitching this in the the called for Averosoir d'Alger silks on a piece of 40 count in the colourway Dove Grey that I dyed myself. This is where the piece is now. And all the stitches that I did were red and yellow stitches over here. So I believe it was the flower here and these flowers down here, and then starting this flower. I didn't really want to take the border down that far, but seeing I had some reference points in the middle, it was less scary. But I have stuffed up this border before and had to unpick a lot. So reproduction samplers aren't normally my style, but this one has a donkey in the middle there, and that's why I'm working on it. So don't expect to see a lot of reproduction samplers from me, but that one I just couldn't go past the donkey. You don't get a lot of patterns with donkeys. So that's Louise Lallier, and that got, like I said, 301 stitches in the last fortnight and met its monthly goal of 500. Now the next one is Extraordinary Bird Sale by Lola Crow cross stitch. I didn't keep up with this sale. I've only just finished the border and started on into part 1. This is being stitched, I believe, on a piece of 28 count even weave that I had in my stash from Crafty Leanie. This was one of her fabrics of the month. This is where I am up to. And all of my stitches, the 300 stitches from last fortnight, went into part 1. So it was filling in the white stitches in the bird and then a lot of the water. So that's Extraordinary Bird Sale. I do have my bag here today, so I can tell you, I should be able to tell you if I can find the card. Oh, there it is. The fabric is actually called Ultramarine Dream, but it was one of her Fabric of the Month fabrics from quite a few years ago now. I haven't been in a Fabric of the Month club really since I started dyeing fabric myself. Now it just seems, unless there's a fabric I can't not replicate but get close to myself, I will usually just try and dye the fabric myself. So that's Extraordinary Bird Cell by Lola Crow. And that has met its monthly goal. We'll put it down there. And then we've got Black Vintage Sampler. So this is a piece by Our Forest Embroidery. I'm not stitching mine in black. Mine's being stitched in a Halloween type Silks for You thread. It was in a mystery pack, so I can't give you the exact colourway. It's also on a piece of 22 count in colourway Dove that I dyed myself. And this has had 400 stitches in the last fortnight. And mostly they were this lantern, this hot air balloon, and then these bits and pieces here. I think that's smoke coming out of the chimney. But I really like the way this is turning out. I really like the thread choice. That was my son's thread choice. Probably wouldn't have been my pick, but it was his, and I really like the way that it's stitching up. So that's Black Vintage Sampler for 400 stitches. And that's also met its monthly goal. So then moving on, we have the pieces that haven't quite yet met their monthly goal, but have still got a few days, so they'll all get done. So next up is They Come at Night. So this is a piece by Fox and Rabbit. And their cover picture is orientated slightly differently to the pattern. So you need to twist it one rotation and then you'll get it. So this is being stitched on a piece of, again, crafty leany fabric that I had in my stash. I think it's called Halloween or Halloweeny. It's a piece of 32 count Belfast. And since you've last seen it, this has had 804 stitches. So basically finished this bottom border, did all of the top board or top part of that border, and then all of this in the centre there is all new. I'm really enjoying the way this is turning out on this fabric, because as you saw from the cover photo, it was designed to be stitched on a really dark black fabric, but I didn't have any of that in my stash. I don't like dyeing black fabric, and to be honest, it's not my favourite to stitch on, and I just thought that might work. So that has another 200 stitches to go to meet its monthly goal. So that'll happen over the next 3 days. Then I've got Modern Folk Embroidery Sale from 2021. So far behind on this one. I'm stitching this in a Cottage Garden Threads colour called Dragonfly, and also a DMC for the orange. Since you've last seen it, this has had 700 stitches. So I've brought the orange down a bit here and down a bit over here, and then done a little bit of the dragonfly stitching over there, but predominantly orange stitching to meet colour challenges. But 700 stitches on that one, and that's got another 500 stitches to meet its monthly goal, and that'll probably mostly happen tonight, I would say. So that's Modern Folk Embroidery Sale. It's called Fruits of Plenty. A lot of people are stitching that, or have stitched that. It was quite popular at the time, and people are even starting it now. So it is a beautiful pattern, but Jacob's patterns have a lot of stitches. So if you're planning on starting a Modern Folk embroidery, get ready for the ride, because there's more stitches than you think. Next up is Patchwork Sampler. So this is by Yarn Hauptmann. I'm not stitching this in his colourway. I'm just stitching this essentially to meet colour challenges or leftover threads that I have in my stash. For this month, it's been used for a colour starting with E or F. So I went with DMC Forest Green. So last time you saw it, I was working on this motif here, which has been finished. And so not quite enough for 1,000 stitches. So I went for a slightly darker shade of forest green and started down here in the big letters. And this had 405 stitches in the last fortnight and still has another 200 stitches to go to meet its monthly goal. But again, that'll happen over the next 3 days. So that's Patchwork Sampler. And then the second last, I did, as mentioned in the last video, I did pick up one of my needle points because it had a birthday. So this is Long Time Gone Stitching by Beautiful Stitches. I'm stitching it in my own colourway, not the called for colourway. It just went onto the Silks for You website and picked colours slightly more muted. That's where it's at. And all of the work that I did was up here in these Scotch stitches, I think they're called, and Smyrna crosses, I think. Don't know. But that's where it was worked on. It was only equivalent to 100 stitches. I've really got to be in the mood for those, and that doesn't happen very often. But I still keep working on them. My goal for my 2 needlepoint stitches is just to stitch on them for 6 days each throughout the year. So they don't have big lofty goals, but I just like to keep them ticking over. And then the last thing that I stitched on in the last 2 weeks, again, I think we discussed it in the last video, is Horse Circle. So this is the new stitch for my son's birthday. I've got 10 of these circles to stitch. So far I've done 3. And this just got a very measly 100 stitch start. So nothing exciting. I do tend to start these as close to the middle as I can, just because they're a circle. There's no corner really to start in. So that was 100 stitches on Horse. And that pattern is from Oh My Stitches on Etsy. She's got lots of really nice landscapey type patterns, animal type patterns. She's worth checking out if you're interested in small full coverage or just nice patterns in general. So that's it for all of the stitching that I have done in the last 2 weeks. So that was 20 projects that I touched. Strangely enough, I only touched 13 in each fortnight, but obviously there was some that I touched one fortnight, not the other. So 20 all up for the last fortnight. And I just came just shy of my 7,000 stitch goal with 6,985 stitches for the month. So this month I did say I had a few stitches up my sleeve. I've had a couple of non-stitching days this month, just due to some personal stuff that's been going on in the background. And I doubt I'll be able to make up, or I'll probably have to use those to make up some of that lost ground. So I won't have really a lot of spare extra stitches to put in at the end of the month once I've finished off those few pieces that still have monthly goals. So that is it for what I've stitched on. So let's look at, to start off with, temperature stitching for the upcoming week. So the temperatures for the upcoming week are 22, 20, 27, 24, 22, 16 and 20. So we'll start off 22. 22 is sampler patchwork squares. I'm not going to pull this out again, but this is the piece. So that's going to get 200 stitches in the upcoming fortnight, and I'll just continue with the diagonal. Then we've got number 0, or number 0. It sounds weird saying number 0, but that is Artemis. So this is a piece by Alice Stitch. I bought this on a website similar to Etsy, but it wasn't Etsy, and her store is now closed. So we just need to assume that this pattern has now been discontinued. I'm stitching it on a piece of 22 count hardanger. I'm not sure of the colourway, but this was dyed by an Australian dyer, Sugar and Spice. She's no longer dyeing. Oh, move the little fish needle minder. Oh, I lost his back. Okay. So that's where I am, and this will get 200 stitches as well. So I've really just been working down here in her legs and her toga. So I'll just keep working down in there. And this is 1/1 full cross. So that will get 200 stitches. I'll just put that away because if I don't, it'll get lost. Then the next one up is Northern Lights again. So I won't pull that one out again, but I'll remind you with the cover photo. So I've now met my challenge for the navy blue. So for me, it'll just be filling in stitches up in the top there. So who knows what colour we'll work on. Then number 4 is Nature's King. So this is was part of the Hay sale last year. And the artwork is by Carol Cavallaris. This is being called Once in the Next Week, so it will get 100 stitches. This is on 28 count even weave, 1/1 full cross, and I'm just filling in this edge here and making that back to a full block, and then I'll continue down in 10 by 10 columns. And the lines that you can see on screen do not show up in real life, so I'm not concerned about them at all. And I think I've said this in previous videos, I actually really enjoy stitching on this piece, despite the fact that there's just a lot of pink and brown and there's not a lot of definition in it. It's just really enjoyable to work on. Then the next one up is Band of Braves again. So that was the piece by Long Dog Sampler. And I'll just continue working, probably colouring in the bison on the end there and working down in the ground section as well. Again, 100 stitches isn't much, so it's not going to move along very far. So that's temperature stitching for the upcoming week. Now, let's talk about plans for April. So, as most of you would know, I am the person that sits behind the Down Under Divas Challenge group, and most of my stitching each month, or my bulk of stitching each month, sits around those challenges. I don't write those challenges to meet my whips, so I struggle like everybody else sometimes to find something that matches, but this is what we're doing. So this year we're ambling through the alphabet, and April is G and H. So first up is 2,000 stitches on a pattern that starts with G. So for me, that pattern is Girl with Primrose. So this is a piece by My Blue Violet Mood on Etsy. And the artwork is by Alphonse. I should know. See if I can find it on the pattern. No, it doesn't say. Sorry, I can't remember. I'm having a brain blank. Again, this is on a piece of 22 count hardanger in the same fabric that I'm doing Artemis on. And this is where I'm at. So this will get 2,000 stitches in April. When in April, I don't know, but sometime in April, this will get 2,000 stitches. So that's Girl with Primrose. And next time, hopefully I won't be having a brain meltdown and I'll be able to remember the name of the artist. But essentially he was quite a famous artist from the 1920s. Then the next one is H, 2,000 stitches on a pattern that starts with letter H. So for me, that is horse by Oh My Stitches. So this will get 2,000 stitches in April. So that'll give it a good start. And that's, to be honest, that's why my son and I picked this one as the next one to stitch on, because I didn't have a pattern that started with the letter H. So we both decided that the horse was going to be the one. He's happy. He doesn't really mind which order I stitch them in. Occasionally he cares, but most of the time he doesn't. Then the next one is a colour that starts with G or H. So G, pretty standard colour, green. So I'm going to use Art Deco Cafe again. And of course that's right on the bottom of the pile. And this is where I am. So this will get 1,000 stitches in green. There's 2 different shades of green in this pattern. There is the dark green in the hat, and there's also some more of these green, light green swirls, I think, or lines down the bottom of the pattern. Yeah, so you can see the bottom. There's the steps. And the floor in the light green. So we'll just carry on with green on that one. So that's 1,000 stitches in green. Then the next one is a pattern by a designer that starts with G or H. And for me, I'm going to be using Heaven and Earth Designs as my designer. And I'm going to be working on Beautiful Day. So this is artwork by Roosbay Buramali, and I apologise if I have butchered that. This is being stitched on a piece of 28 count even weave. And I haven't got very far on this. This was a new start last year on Christmas Day. This is where this is. And this has a goal of 1,000 stitches for April and 5,000 stitch goal for the year. So that's the starting point. It's just a very small, sorry for all the moving, measly start. We'll just continue in the diagonal block work. It's just in the background there up the top. But just had to stitch on this piece. I have another little white rescue dog now who's as deaf as a post. But this picture, when I saw it, just reminded me of our last little white rescue dog that we had. We had to put her down, not this last Christmas, but the Christmas before, because she came quite ill. And she was my little shadow. And the picture just reminds me of her happy little face. So that's Beautiful Day. That'll get 1,000 stitches for a designer starting with H. Then I'm moving on to the number 5 at this year is always another colour or another designer starting with either G or H. So again with G is easy. So we're going with grey. So this is going to be a new start for me this month. Whitgo came up with the number 13 this month, which for me is a new start. So I'm going to be starting Koala by Cottage Garden Samplings, and that's going to be stitched on the same piece of fabric as my sugar glider. So it's going to sit next to my sugar glider on this piece of fabric. So this is a piece of forest floor fabric that I dye myself, 40 count 1/1, and it'll be stitched in the called for colours, so a combination of DMCs and a couple of classic colourworks. I've got one of the classic colourworks. I don't have the other one. So I have got Plymouth Rock, and the other colourway is Thundercloud, and I've had my LNS, which is Kerrilyn, pop a skein of that aside for me, so I'll grab that the next time I'm in. and that'll get 1,000 stitches in grey on the koala. So that's a new start. Then the next one up, we're moving into the 500 stitch goals now. So the next one is G for grass. So that is going to be Spring at Tulip Cottage. So there is some grass hiding up in there. This is my only kit. I'm not a big kit stitcher. This was one of the Mystery Gecko Rouge Gecko Joie from 2023. So essentially it's a mystery pattern, but you get it all at once. It's a mystery kit. So this is on 28 count, 1/1, easy grid or easy count. This is where I'm up to. I did a little bit of work on the house over here for some colour challenge a while ago. But I'm predominantly just stitching over here, and this is where the 500 stitches will go for G for grass. And I'm really enjoying this. There's a lot of confetti in Gecko Rouge kits. Unless it's just Joe Grundy artwork, but I'm guessing not. But yeah, a lot of confetti stitching. So if you haven't done a Gecko Rouge kit before, just beware. They are quite heavy with the confetti. Then next up is Saga. So Saga is another piece by Long Dog Sampler. I think this one was released last year. Sorry about that. My mum just brought some coat hangers down. Okay, so like I was saying, I think this was released last year or the year before. I'm stitching this on a piece of 40 count linen. Now, I think the colour is latte or cafe latte, or it says Weigart fabric. And I'm just, for Christmas or my birthday a few years ago, my husband bought me the full collection of cottage garden threads, that the collection that was put out by Joanna behind Mojo Stitches in Australia. So I think it's the bookshelf collection. So I'm stitching this using those as in a similar fashion to the way that I'm stitching Pandemic. I'm picking a skein and stitching that out until it's gone. However, some of the colours are very variegated and some of the colours are not so variegated or quite plain, standard straight colours. So I'll be trying to use those plainer colours to pick out some of the animals in the pictures. So at the moment I haven't gotten to any animals. I'm still just stitching the top row of frame in the same colour. So this thread that I'm currently stitching on is called Pocket Full, and it's like a reddy brown pink kind of colour, and that is where I am at. And so I don't have a lot of this thread left, so this will get 500 stitches and it'll be finishing off this ground here and this ground over here. I don't know if there's any ground over in this one to do or whether that's more pattern, but I'll just have to see. It may be that I need to pick up another thread as well and start working with that. But this is, 1/2 on 40 count full cross using the bookshelf thread collection. And we'll just see how it works. I'm not very good at picking my own colours in patterns, so I don't really have rhyme or reason for doing things like that, so we'll just see how it works. But that is Saga. And that was, G for ghost, gargoyle or ghoul, and there are some gargoyle type characters in that pattern. Then next up we've got G for glasses. So this is another 500 stitches, and I had a few choices for this as a pattern, but I ended up going with the Bluey Sail by Olivia Lee Studios. I'm stitching this on 32 count even weave in a colourway that I dyed myself called Starlet. And this is where I'm currently at. And this will get 500 stitches. Where I put them, who knows? I'm currently working, as you can see down the bottom, in that square down there, working on that little puppy dog. Some of those need some backstitch. So whether I go back and do some backstitching or whether I just keep cross-stitching, backstitching is not my favourite thing to do. So if I'm in the mood for it, I tend to jump on it. But we will see how we go with that one. But yeah, 500 stitches on that one for G with glasses, because a couple of or at least one of the dogs is wearing glasses. So that's Bluey. And if you're not familiar with Bluey, it's a little Australian cartoon. I believe it's become quite viral worldwide now. So if you've got little kids and you're looking for a good show and they haven't seen Bluey, I'd highly recommend it. It was one of my son's favourites when he was little. Then I've got H for horse, or H or any other animal that starts with H. So I went with one that we had out this month, Black Vintage Sampler, because it has a horse, and obviously I'm already doing the horse pattern for patterns that start with the letter H. So I went with Black Vintage Sampler. I don't have a lot of I think these are the only two horses that I have. There might be a horse in Saga, but I think that's a donkey. So we'll just be doing 500 more stitches on this one in April. And I'm not sad about that. So that's Black Vintage Sampler by Our Forest Embroidery. Then next we've got H for Heart. And again, this is a repeat from this month that we've just had. And I'll be doing Pandemic. So Pandemic is this one. Oh no, we don't have called 13th Colony Bay. That's going away. So Pandemic, again, I'll show you where this is at again. And I'll just be working in that rainbow colourway in the middle until the thread runs out. This is going to take me a long time. But that's okay. So like I said, I'm just using random skeins of silks for you. I've started off with skeins I got from the Sassy Pouch when we were collating that. And then once I use up all of those, I'll just use on some other random silks for you skeins that I've collected along the way, either from mystery packs or presents that people have given me. So that's Pandemic by Long Dog Sampler, and that'll get 500 stitches for H for Heart. If you didn't see it, there are some hearts hiding, and I can usually find them. Oh, so if we come over here, not in that big motif at the bottom, but if you go up one, there's some hearts there. They're hiding, but they're there. And then the lastly is H for Hat. So H for Hat for me, again, is a repeat. I could have used Art Deco Cafe, but I've used that for green. I could have used Black Vintage Sampler because the man has wearing a hat, and I believe that, can't remember if the lady is or not, but the man is definitely wearing a top hat. But I went with Wind in the Willows again, the pain-free craft sale from, I think it was 2022. Let me find the picture. Here it is. I'm not going to pull this one out again. But you can see in there that Toad is wearing a hat. So that's H for Hat, and that'll get another 500 stitches. Unless I'm called to stitch in the full coverage bunny section, I'll probably just keep doing border, because border on this is fairly easy and I can get 500 stitches knocked out pretty quickly. But it will just depend if the colour challenge comes up, or if I'm in the mood to work down in that section, then I might. But I'm probably thinking it'll be in the border. So that is it. So now we will just draw the deck of whips. A card for the deck of whips for the next week. fingers crossed for me. It's not one that's I'm already working on in April or just worked on in March, but we'll see. I'll have to get my phone too so I can know what the pattern is. I'll just pull that up. Okay, so the card for the deck of whips is the 8 of clubs. Gee, we're just not having any luck with red cards at all. So the 8 of clubs for me is a new start for 2026. So no joy on no repeats. So for me, Spring Garden Band Sampler got used a couple of weeks ago for a piece that I had actually finished that got called. So that was again a new start of 2026. So other than koala, so it could be koala, doubt it. The only other new start for 2026 that I have had so far is horse. So it's going to be either horse or koala for me. So no joy in something that I haven't seen or I'm not touching this month. But those 300 stitches will be on top of their planned stitches for April. Although those 300 stitches will happen on Monday or Tuesday. So it'll probably be horse because I'm not starting koala yet until April. So that'll be horse. Okay, 300 stitches on horse for me. I hope for you that it's a slightly more exciting project, or if you're like me and you've gone for the 52 project options, that you're getting a bit of variety, that it's not one that you're already stitching on. For me, not so lucky. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me. I'm sorry about the interruption earlier. I'm hoping to be back next week. With everything that's going on in my life at the moment, though, we won't make any promises. So if you don't see a FlossTube from me next week, then I'll be back the week after. Thanks again so much for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, think about, thumbs up, a like, subscribing, leave me a comment. I do try and answer comments. I'm not always on a platform where I have the ability to do that, but I at least give you a heart and I will come back and answer them when I can. So again, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you again in hopefully a week. Bye.